This conference will now be recorded.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so all 5 members of the planning board are present and all 5 voted to open the meeting. The other note we'll make is due to the coronavirus pandemic, we're meeting virtually. Village Hall closed to the public. And this is all consistent with orders from Governor Cuomo that will be meeting virtually by video conference. And there is a link on the website under the planning board section to join this meeting. And we do have a couple members of the public and applicants that have joined. So anyone from the public is welcome to join and observe our deliberations tonight. So with that said, we were talking about the Collins application. Maybe Ms. Collins, did you have any initial comments? I see you're here and you're listening to things. Otherwise, I'd like to move on to the variance application we have first.
I can certainly wait. I logged on. I wasn't aware that you would have been speaking about it beforehand. I know that we're on the agenda after the variance, so I can certainly wait.
Yeah, we were just asking a little background discussion. It's nothing. So sometimes people have questions about applications. So questions are kind of directed towards the attorney and the building inspector, and we can go into a little more detail later. So
Okay.
That's fine. All right, so let's go ahead and start with conflicts of interest disclosure. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest to disclose?
No.
No for me as well. Okay. All right, so we'll start with the variance application, and it looks like the Murrays are on there. And you may have heard our discussion earlier about there may be one other code issue, which is your lot is smaller than allowed by code. And so the question is whether your all the impervious surface exceeds the minimum requirement in code, or a maximum requirement in code. So it sounds like that's likely the case, and the only impact on you would be it sounds like this would need to get continued into our next meeting, and we would just consider both requests simultaneously. So did you have any thoughts or comments at this time?
I would ask, our driveway isn't paved, it's a stone driveway, so does that count as a impermeable surface?
I looked at the definition in our code, and crushed stone does count, and it has in the past. So, one of the general things of concern here is when you start getting more and more stuff paved on a lot, it becomes more and more challenging to figure out where to put the water. So the stormwater type things where you have roof runoff, you're supposed to contain it on your property, so, and not direct it towards the neighbor's property, and things like that. And so as more and more surface goes up, then coming up with a plan for that is helpful. And in general, our code is set up to provide an upper limit for that. But when you have a really tiny lot like you have, then that becomes hard to comply with. So our discussion earlier, basically it looks like the primary issue here is your lot is smaller than set up in code, which creates a code problem because your house is a fairly common size.
Right. So would it be possible to discuss the area variance as it pertains to the setback, just so we could find out where we stand with that?
Well, that's on the agenda, so we certainly can discuss that. So maybe we can start by just asking you to clarify a few questions. First of all, what is the dimensions of your addition?
The dimensions of the addition, I believe it's 22 by 19, but let me. And this printout's quite small, so.
Yeah, I wasn't quite able to read the dimensions on the copy we were given.
Sorry about that. 22 by 19, but there's a little notch cut out of one of the corners, so it would be a little bit smaller than that.
Do you have a square footage for it?
I can quickly calculate one.
Oh, okay. So it's 22 feet long and 19 feet wide?
It is, well, it's 22 feet wide, depending on how you are, what you're calling width versus length.
Let's say the direction of the patio would be width. So the shorter dimension of the house.
It's 22 feet wide from side yard to side yard and 19 feet from the house running towards the driveway.
Okay. All right. I mean, I don't have, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just asking for clarification.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't.
It looks like with the cutout, you're looking at, let's see, 387 square feet, which is about just under 7% of the overall lot.
Yeah, I figured it has 387 square feet with the cutout in it.
Hello, this is David Burrows. I'm the architect, and I can give you an exact area.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sorry to jump in and didn't get here sooner.
worries.
I get 354 square feet for the addition. So 354.
Okay, great, thank you. It might be something that I'm having trouble reading on the copy we were given.
Right, and I don't know if we actually gave you the areas, but I'm on AutoCAD and I just did a polyline, and you can check to see what the exact area is, and 353 square feet is what I just got.
Great, yep, the AutoCAD will be a lot more accurate than what I'm doing here.
Okay.
So Dave, a discussion we had earlier is it looks like the total lot coverage for impervious surface exceeds the 25% allowed in our code.
Right, so the lot size is 6,139, 25% of that is 1,535. The house and addition add up to 1,269. Then we have to consider all the shed and the other surfaces. So now that I have this information, and actually we weren't aware that we were going to need to do this, but now that I do have it, I can come up with the amount that we are over and look at what we can do to resolve it.
I think that would be helpful. The building inspector was going to go out there, but if you have it in your computer and could just send him an email that gives the lot coverage, then we can compute how big a variance is needed for that. So the proposal was to amend the application to include a lot coverage variance, and we would try to wrap this all up at our next meeting.
Okay. As Jonathan suggested, though, could we do the setback variance also, or are you saying that we should wait until the next meeting for that?
Well, I think we can talk about it, and I think the goal here is just get a general understanding of what's being proposed, which is, so the board understands that, and we can start. I guess we'll have to decide if we want to start talking about findings, and we'll see what the board wants to do. So first of all, let's keep asking a few questions about what's being proposed here. Now, this is a one-story addition, is that correct?
Jonathan, do you want to answer that?
It's a two-story addition.
Okay, so each story then is going to be approximately the 300 square feet.
Right, 353. So it'll be what? 706.
It wouldn't actually be a full second floor on the
Oh,
on the
good point.
addition. more of a
It's a
loft.
loft.
So,
It's a loft.
Okay. So that's I guess I should have looked a little closer at the packet because it was pretty obvious that it was 2 stories. But I was a little confused by the square footage discussion here. So Steve, does that mean he has to go to the planning board too?
Why would that be?
It's over 400 square feet.
Site
Well,
plan.
Wait, is it footprint or total size? I thought it was footprint.
I don't know. You're the code enforcement. I'm just asking the question.
As far as my understanding, it's footprint. It's not the fact that it's 2nd or 2-story. It's the footprint that creates the square footage that requires whether it's over 400 or lot coverage. It's not the fact that it's a 2-story. It's the fact that it's just the pure square footage of the footprint.
There's square feet in gross floor area, and 1 story in height for minor site plan. And then for, let's see, skimming the stuff here. So major site plan is exceeding 400 square feet in gross floor area or 1 story
Patty,
in
I'm
height.
kind of in between a meeting I'm listening to it for my client, but it's not a video. I'm just listening on the phone.
Well, you can buzz me back, but.
All right. Yep.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, let's keep asking a few questions about just the general nature of what's going on. So the addition is being constructed. We have some basic drawings of it. We got an understanding of the size. There is this question now about whether we got to do a site plan as well, but I think we can leave that for an offline. Steve, you can look at that offline, right?
Yep.
Okay. And but for us, we want to know what's being proposed here. So the materials are intended to match the original house. Is that correct? Do you want to, Mr. Murray, do you want to talk a little bit about your materials and what you're doing?
well, I mean, at this point, we haven't gone too far, but the intention is to match the original materials on the house and, you know, the character of the other houses on the street.
Okay. So the architectural review board will do most of the architectural review. So I'm just kind of asking for just a general background here as helpful, because as long as you're doing, our biggest concern is whether it's generally consistent with the house and other houses on the street. And so you stated that's your intent, so that sounds good. So similar type of siding and so on as what's on the original house. So that's fine. So maybe your architect can comment on how you intend to handle drainage and the stormwater. As the amount of impervious surface goes up, that becomes a bigger concern.
Sure. At this point, we expected to be able to drain onto the site. I believe that, and Jonathan can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are now downspouts that drain onto the site. I believe there's not a storm system on this lot. That's true, Jonathan?
Correct.
So we have to drain onto the site unless somebody knows that there's a storm system that we can tap into. So it's a matter of directing downspouts off of the roof and making sure that they stay on the site, grade the site as needed if necessary to make sure that all the runoff stays on the site and not onto the neighbor's property.
Okay, so you don't intend to install any dry wells or anything like that. It's just going to be downspouts coming down on the splash blocks and expecting the grade and the land there to absorb it.
I'd say that'd be our first attempt. If that didn't work, then maybe a dry well would be an option. Another option, which I don't know if this makes sense, but since we have Maple Street and South Street, are there storm systems in those, are there gutters, for instance, in those side streets that could handle some additional runoff from the house? That's a question. I don't know if there's an answer to that.
Yeah, I don't know if we have an answer. I suspect there is a stormwater system. I don't know. I don't know which side of the street it runs on. I don't think there's gutters along the streets, but I think there's an underground stormwater system that goes up and down there. But I don't know off the top of my head. That would have to be investigated. So that could be an option.
Okay, so obviously there's more work that needs to be done to determine what we do with the runoff and to come up with a variance application for the additional lot coverage. So those are things that we will address at the next meeting.
So Steve, I presume you can take a look into drainage and talk to the applicant about that and be able to give us some kind of feedback as to whether or not that seems reasonable to you. Is that correct?
Yes, I will work with the Murrays and Mr. Burrows to try and alleviate these issues.
Okay. I'm not sure if drainage is necessarily a problem, but if you can at least take a look at it, then we'd appreciate your assessment of it.
Okay.
In terms, so let's talk to the board members here before we get into the other criteria. Did anyone have any particular concerns about the side setback? I know that's what they asked for. They're basically asking for an 8-foot setback where 10 is required, and the existing house is a little over 8 now. But if they continue the addition on the current line that the house is, they follow that existing line, it sounds like it'll go down to about a foot. And my general opinion is it sounds like that's pretty common around the village for people to have these older properties to have various deviations in their side setbacks and stuff like that. And I didn't think this was a particular concern for the setback, but that's my opinion. Any other thoughts?
I had no concerns with regards to the setback variance. I think the area variance is of more significance.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think given the, at least in my mind, if Steve comes back with a favorable report on drainage, I see that as the largest impact by expanding the coverage here. And so if that is addressed to Steve's satisfaction, that would go a long way to solving environmental concerns I might have. So that's where I am on that.
I have a quick question. There's a pretty substantial hedge along Maple Street. Will that remain?
Yes.
That's great. Mr. Murray, is the driveway gravel or is it dirt?
Gravel.
All right. And Mr. Burrows?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, and Justin was right in the fact that because it is, I didn't realize it was a 2-story. I only saw the footprint from overhead. This will require a major site plan review. So the things that are necessary are under 210-34.3 in the village code.
Okay. Now, does that meeting have to take place before the next zoning board meeting, or is it separate from that?
Well, this is a combo board.
Okay. Okay.
So we'd be looking at it all at once. The variances need to be dealt with before the site plan. And for the site plan application, I think we just basically need some documentation on your drainage and Steve's assessment of that. And we just, I think your drawings aren't too far off from what we need. We just need to make sure we can read the dimensions on them.
Okay, sure. Also, as you can tell, my site plan doesn't show any sidewalks or any other impervious surfaces other than the stone driveway that's at the back. So I can add those so that we can get a clear calculation for the total impervious surface, so that we, can show you how far off we are from the required 25%.
Okay, and go ahead.
So will there be a back entrance that's close to the driveway?
At this point, we're not sure.
Because I would think there would be a light over that. So that's also something to consider, your neighbor on Maple Street. If there's, you have to be, aware of the light.
Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue, just because there's a pretty significant grade change as you go up Maple Street, and they actually don't have any windows on that side of their house either. So.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe we get some clarification. What we typically look for in lights is that they comply with code, and we ask they be a normal color, which is usually 2700 Kelvin to 3000 Kelvin, which is your standard incandescent light bulb color. And their brightness, I believe per code, needs to be about 75 watts from a single bulb, and then the village doesn't really care as long as it's, you have some kind of full shield around it so you don't see the bulb. So the light goes down onto the ground, not out onto your neighbor's yard. So if it's under 75 watts, we don't normally scrutinize it. And if it's over that, you can ask us for permission for that. And the main request is that it stays on your property and not go on your neighbor's property. That's the main thing we look at. We don't want a garish color, and we don't want it going on the neighbor's property. So those are the two key questions. It's usually not hard to comply with that. So I just wanted to state that so there's some understanding. So in general, as long as your impacts of what you're doing stay on your property, that's the biggest questions we have.
Okay.
So landscaping, I guess we don't need to get into landscaping now, and we don't normally, the site is already landscaped, so you're not proposing anything substantial that's new, correct?
No, not at all.
Okay. So if you have to come in for site plan, I guess if you're putting any light fixtures, we just ask you document them. I think we gave you a general impression of what we're looking for, but should not be hard to comply with, and Steve can work with you on that. The drainage, Steve and your architect will work together on that. And so far, I'm not hearing any concerns about the setback. Do we want to, let me just ask the other members of the board, do you want to start looking at any of the 5 criteria, or do we want to wait and hear this all at once?
Do you want to ask if there's anybody from the public who wants to speak on this application?
That's a good suggestion.
And did we open the public hearing on it yet?
No, we have not. So let's go ahead and I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, how do you vote on that?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Does any member of the public want to make a comment on the application for the addition at 29 South Street? Okay. No member of the public has to speak. Right now, I think my leaning is let's just vote on everything all at once at our next meeting. But they did want some feedback on the side setback. And I mean, if anyone wants to comment on that, they can, but this is the type of situation I think we've pretty much always approved it in our recent history. Because we acknowledge that there are some quirks to these old properties and old houses, and as long as it's not a large request, so 2 feet out of 10 feet, so you're going from a 10-foot setback to an 8-foot setback, doesn't sound like an unreasonable request, at least in my opinion. So it doesn't seem to be asking for an extraordinarily large.
Yeah, and it is a pre-existing setback, and they're not making it worse than a house that's already existing.
Correct. Thank you for pointing that out, Steve.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that it would be adjacent to the neighbor's detached garage, so it's not likely to obscure any kind of a view or present an issue there, it seems.
And it looked like that garage is only about 2 feet from the property line.
Right.
So that was something I was kind of wondering about when I saw that, is you'd have this addition and this garage, and I don't know how stormwater is going to work between those two, but that's a lot of water going into a small space, or it could be.
If I may ask as well, it looks like the addition would be leveling the grade of the back lawn there to flatten it out. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
A little bit. The grade is fairly flat where the addition is, and then it comes up maybe another foot as it gets to the edge of the driveway, and then we have a retaining wall where the driveway steps up quite a bit.
Okay, so no, your yard, it slopes down towards South Street, so the front of your house is lower than the back of your house.
Correct.
And when I looked at it, it looked like you might be slightly higher than your neighbor's yard, but not much different.
Than our neighbor on South Street?
Your neighbor on South Street, correct.
That's correct, yeah.
And they have a driveway going back to their garage that runs basically near the property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, does anyone else have any more questions for him?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. When Mr. Burrows redoes and updates the site plan, if you could also put in the location of the retaining wall, I think the board might want to take a look at that in evaluating the drainage issues.
Okay. I will make sure that retaining wall is located in the site plan.
And also please note the location of any downspouts as well.
Right, that would be definitely part of the drainage plan.
Okay. All right. Does any other questions at this time?
I would only have one ask, which is, could you include the current square footage and the future square footage anticipated for the property?
Yes, I can do that.
Thanks.
And do you have to, Justin, do you have to make a motion to hold open the public hearing?
Yeah, we can do that. Linda, what is the date of our next meeting?
It's December 16 and it's on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And may I confirm that's going to be the site plan review as well as a re-review of this zoning variance application?
It sounds like that's the plan. We can get it done all at once as long as we get drawings in fairly soon, because the building inspector needs to review the drawings and the board members need to review the drawings.
Okay.
So, when do you think you would have updated drawings available?
Well, how soon do you need them? Would you say November 30th is soon enough?
Well, our deadline is unfortunately November 17th.
Okay.
For publishing?
Pardon?
Linda, is that for publishing deadline or the application
No,
deadline?
no, that's application deadline.
Right, and you'll also need the application for site plan approval and the application for the lot coverage variance.
Correct.
And what's, are
I'm
they
gonna-
both, the-
I'm going to have them modify the existing for the application that they've made for the side setback. I will have them modify that application to also include the area variance, and then I will have them put in a site plan application. Mr. Murray, can you do that tomorrow or the next day?
I believe so, yes.
Okay,
and so can I.
okay.
Yeah, so that basically that would be just the paperwork for the application. We've already seen the basic drawings, so we know what's going on. And then if you can get the revised drawings in by the end of November, I can accept that.
Okay, good. That would give us time to take a closer look. I wouldn't want to submit anything that hadn't been well thought out. So it'd be appreciated to have a little extra time.
So Steve, would that give you adequate time to look it over before our meeting?
Yes, I'll be fine with that. Mr. Burrows and I can be in contact in between that with any questions or to make sure they're on the right page.
Okay. All right, well, thanks. And sorry, there's a few extra hoops that came up at the meeting tonight. We'll keep working with you. Things like this happen from time to time. And we fully recognize that there's lots of quirky properties in this village, and that's why we're here to just take a look at it. So that's why these variances are a common thing that comes up. So there's nothing unusual or uncommon about it. So it's just a process we got to go through, make sure everything is reasonable. And I think we've explained everything about what concerns we could have tonight. So hopefully that'll be in a position to get to a final resolution at our next meeting.
I'd agree. Yeah, thanks for your cooperation. It really helps.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to leave the public hearing open and continue discussion this at our next regular meeting on December 16th.
Second.
Do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right. It sounds like we're all set with that application. So let's move on to the Collins application. So the question that was being debated earlier is that Steve had introduced this as a patio and as an accessory structure that's being constructed by the Collins for use by multiple properties. And there was the question as to how this impacts Lock 32. And what Steve had said is this is going to be open for use by all of the properties, not just Lock 32. So that was a question earlier. And Steve, you've already talked to the trustees about some possible zoning code changes, correct?
Yes.
Could you remind, oh, sorry, Steve, could you remind me of where that overlay, how it falls short of that space?
Yeah, somehow in the code was done, the tavern overlay stopped at the wall of Lock 32.
The outside built
Yeah.
wall of the building.
Yep. Yep, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't include Simply Crabs and land. Excuse me, Pierre, sorry. But I would have thought they would have included Simply Crepes and Aladdin's in that tavern overlay. It would have alleviated part of this issue right now.
Right.
But that can be solved, like I said, with temporary use permit until the tavern overlay district is expanded. And the trustees seem amicable to expanding the tavern overlay district.
Yeah, I know, I'm pretty sure that was one of the things in our code request changes that was brought up by us long ago, in our long list of changes, and that didn't make it, I think, into, yep, so Justin, I see you have that pulled up. That's the end of the Tavern Overlay District.
Right.
And lining that up with the edge of the property is a little tricky. But I think that next edge is Collins property. That one there.
Yep. Does an overlay district have to include the entirety of the next adjacent property?
I don't think so, because if you look at it, it doesn't include all of 50 State Street, does it?
No, it doesn't include any of 50 State, I don't believe. I think it just goes to the barns. I mean, this is why we made some comments on this, I think, a while back, is it excluded 50 State Street and excluded the Lock 32 area, which is the areas that are our busiest waterfront areas, and it included an office building, which is the flour mill, included the furniture store, which is Victor Furniture, and then included the vacant barns. And so it seems like it's excluding the real estate that would be most likely to use this. And I'm not even going to speculate on whether there were errors or if this was intentional. Doesn't really matter. But I know we had previously requested it be expanded to include some of our more prominent waterfront districts, but that's obviously up to the trustees. And I don't know what our exact comment was, but we had observed this in the past, and for whatever reason, this is where the boundaries are.
Unfortunately, that leads me to a very bad question that I don't even know if I want to bring up right now. In looking at this drawing,
We left it hanging here.
well, now they mention it, the new microbrewery.
Yeah, that was another long story, and that came to us, the ZBA at the time, and we found it was on appeal. Remember that whole appeal? And we had found that based on the zoning code at the time, that I believe that it was a permissible use.
Okay, because of the agriculture operation, but I mean that and label 7's not in it either.
Yeah, it would make sense to me to include all of those in there, include label 7, include that nano brewery. You probably wouldn't want to include the businesses in people's backyards, but you know, that's a matter for the trustees, but I think that would make sense to include some of those other businesses.
Right, because technically if label 7 left and somebody else wanted to utilize the same space, they wouldn't technically be allowed to because they're not in the tavern overlay without some sort of variance, right?
I think they could be a restaurant still. So
Right.
the tavern,
They couldn't serve alcohol.
Right.
I think they can serve alcohol. It's just more than 50% of the revenue has to come from food or something like that. I don't know exactly all that, but the other one that's in that boat is Via Girasol, who is the wine bar down at Shane Place. So what happened was I think they previously allowed wine and beer only type bars in Shane Place. Then Via Girasol legally went in, Lock 32 legally went in. Then the trustees decided to repeal that law and revisit where they're allowing bars to go, and which ultimately was a driver for doing the whole comprehensive plan. And then we came up with a new comprehensive plan and zoning code, and I guess there's still questions about whether these make sense. But again, that's kind of how we got here. As to why this district is located where it is, I can't answer that.
I know they're talking about expanding it, and I will bring into the discussion about expanding it both ways, not just towards Grassy Wine Bar, but down the other end. Yes, on the right end, lower right end there, Justin. Yes.
Any other members of planning board have thoughts about that?
Seems appropriate to me.
We talked a lot when we were updating the code about making more things conformant, and I think that in that respect, it would make much more sense to increase the size of the zone to encompass those properties that already have that use.
Absolutely.
And what's the decision, or what was the decision with the Tequila Rio? Was that a existing non-conforming use? Because that's also a tavern.
I'm not quite sure. I mean, it was already the bar or tavern there. So, I mean, it's the same use that was always there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's another district over there that was, isn't that right? Or we're looking on State Street. So is the library in the Tavern Overlay District? It looks like it.
Yep.
So they include the library and vacant barn to serve.
Oh, beer and books go together.
That's a good idea. They should. Good event.
And Thirsties is in that district now. So Thirsties is now legal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's an improvement.
1 out of 5 or so.
So then what do we need to do with regards to the new pavilion?
So I guess our question is whether we need to wait for any of these code changes to take effect to hear it. And I don't know if that's fully resolved or not.
I don't see why you'd have to wait for code changes as far as the structure itself and a site plan. I don't understand why you would have to wait for code changes, because the standalone unit or accessory structure and site plan are a separate issue from any of the code changes. The use by Lock 32 is irrelevant, because the State Liquor Authority, and then they've made application to you for a temporary use permit, which won't be heard till December. Which is, this whole process is going to take a while, but there really is not, in my opinion, there's no need to wait for code changes to look at the site plan issue and the structure itself. What has to be dealt with is deciding whether they would have to apply for a variance for the parking.
Yes, and I didn't know what was going on with the parking, but we haven't seen a parking analysis yet of how many spots exist and how many are required. And I was supposing that Steve wouldn't be exactly excited about figuring that all out, because that would take a while.
Yeah, and if we're treating this as an accessory structure to a principal use that's non-conforming, I think we need to take a closer look at whether it's an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use. I mean, if you're calling it an accessory to the principal use, which is non-conforming, we at least need to address that.
Why is it non-conforming, Mindy?
I thought that Lock 32 is a pre-existing non-conforming use.
No, they're in the Tavern Overlay District.
No, they're not. I thought it was what you said.
Lock 32 is in the Tavern Overlay District. It ends at the far wall of Lock 32. Lock 32 is completely
far wall. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you said the wall, I thought you meant the wall, the exterior wall.
No, Lock 32 is completely within the Tavern Overlay District. They ended it on I guess that would be the northwest wall.
The exterior wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just short of the patio.
Right.
Okay, good. And the pavilion will be accessory to the Lot 32 use is
No,
the,
it's an accessory to the Collins's property.
you don't get accessory to a property. You get accessory to a use.
Does it matter, would it matter which structure, if it's either Aladdin's or Lock 32? Because Lock 32 has the alcohol issue.
Well, that's why we need to take a closer look at it.
Now, when I look at this map on the screen, if you see that red line above it, that's the end of the Corby's property for the dairy. If you extend that straight to the canal, that's where Lock 32 is. So if you see that little blue dot right at the canal, if you were to extend that line straight, I thought that's where go a couple dots to the right. Right, that one right there. I believe that's where Lock 32 is.
Now, my understanding, looking at the map that I have, is that Lock 32 is completely within the Tavern Overlay District. When they did it, they included Lock 32.
Okay. Well, if that's your determination, we'll go by that because it's very hard to tell by the map. So that's a useful determination to make.
And is the location of the pavilion inside or outside of the Tavern Overlay District?
Outside, currently outside.
Is it on a separate parcel or is it on the same parcel?
Same parcel.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the parcel here. So Lock 32 and then Aladdin's. And here's the pavilion.
Those aren't in the overlay district.
And you can see the line for the property above that lot line with the Corby's. Because where you extend that straight down and that hits Lock 32. Or thereby.
Well, no, if you send it straight down, if you send the angle straight down, you're cutting right through the corner of Lock 32.
Right.
Yes.
Go down that way.
Yeah, the Tavern Overlay District specifically ends at the bottom right of that blue box, that southeast perpendicular there. Yeah, so
not down here.
No, from that corner up to the top right, go northeast from there.
That's where it ends?
That's the end of the Tavern Overlay.
So it doesn't include.
Doesn't include it at all.
Yes, it does include Lock 32. The Tavern Overlay District enclosed Block 32.
I wish it would, but that's not how the map is drawn on the comprehensive plan.
Is the updated zoning map posted to the website?
Okay, so let's go there.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Okay.
Thanks. So this may be one of those issues where there's an updated zoning map that isn't part of the original comp plan, so I might be looking at an old one.
Right.
All
This
right.
should be the new one.
So who has a new one?
This is the new one right here.
All right, then that still doesn't work because that top.
Here's the Corby's.
Yeah, that northwest yellow line.
Right, here's the two small. Yeah.
It still doesn't, it's still not included, 100%.
Right, you're right, because these two small properties, that's the thing you can use to distinguish it too. So yeah, this line and that, it does
the whole
not.
property is excluded.
Right.
Now,
My
that was,
understanding, and when this all was done, was that part of the whole purpose of making the Tavern Overlay District was to include Lock 32 within it. So I don't know how we verify that because you don't have physical structures on this map.
Well, it doesn't really matter what they intended. What matters is what they passed by resolution.
Correct. So how do we verify where that line is compared to Lock 32?
those lot lines are
Going
actually
right out because the lot lines. See, if you look at this gray here, these two small parcels, and you compare that with the Monroe County GIS map, which is right here. So look where those two small parcels are, and there's a distance on the zoning map between those, and so this is the parcel in question with the pavilion, and it ends quite a distance from there. So it ends at the extent of this property.
Yeah, that's the end of it right there.
Right.
What, the tavern overlay?
Yep.
Yes.
It ends at that little blue shaded area right now.
The flour mill and grain silo.
Right.
Then you put a bar on the roof of the grain silo. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Sky bar.
Right. So understanding this, how does it affect the application before us?
Really doesn't. It's got nothing to do with Lock 32 at this point.
It has everything to do with Lock 32.
Oh, true. If you're going to call it an accessory structure to Lock 32.
You called it an accessory use.
Yeah, I call it accessory structure, but to the Collins' property, not to Lock 32.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that. If the zoning code will let us call it an accessory structure without reference to use, I'm not sure. Let's take a look. I mean, they did some funky things with this code rewrite. I'm happy to take a look at it.
Take a look. And also, if the trustees are willing to expand the district, this is all moot. And it sounded like they are willing to, Steve, you said your initial discussions with them, they're willing to expand the district, and that would make sense.
Correct, and that if what Mindy's saying is true, that may have to happen prior or along with this whole application.
They can even take the library out of it if they want to. Expand this section.
So we're looking at 210.24.4, right? Accessory uses and structures are allowed in any zoning district in connection with a principal use lawfully existing within such district, as noted in these use tables. All accessory uses and structures shall conform to the following requirements, blah, blah. But effectively, that first sentence is suggesting use and structures are allowed in any zoning district in connection with any principal use lawfully existing. So this is where it's possible we need a use variance.
I mean, that's typical zoning language that I would expect to find in the code, but like I said, they've done some funky things with this rewrite.
Yeah.
And a use variance is not going to be, it's going to be really hard.
It will be hard?
It will be hard. The criteria for a use variance, David, is that they have to show unnecessary financial hardship with dollars and cents proof. It's a very high burden. It's not like the area variance application proof. It's very, very hard to meet. And in a case where you're not planning to use a property for profit, it would be almost impossible.
So let me ask you the next question then in response. If the application was such that no existing business were to solicit business on that accessory unit, it could be just built and nobody actually tends to it. That is, Lock 32 doesn't send wait staff out to see if you need a drink, but somebody has to go into Lock 32, get a drink, and then go back and sit down. And until a zoning update includes it, then nobody could effectively do that without being in violation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the idea of creating an accessory structure without use is—
You can't.
You can't.
Right. I mean, the structure is accessory to the principal use.
And now there's multiple principal uses on this lot as well. So there's about 6 businesses on this lot. I don't know how that comes into play.
What if the principal use was public good? Like the idea of creating a seating area for patrons of any restaurant and
But it's not. I mean, we could kind of play what if, but I mean, it's not like you're expanding a park.
Well, how would you create a public use area though, then, Mindy? What paths would be available to create a public use area, or you know what I mean, to be able to build this pavilion, given our zoning code the current way it is.
Well, is municipal use a legal use in this district? You know, park use, municipal use, public use, is it a permissible use in this zoning district?
I
Because if
don't
so, then
have,
the easiest way, you know, might be to, you know, lease it to the village and have them operate a public pocket park, you know? I mean, there are ways that you could do it, but I'm not sure that's really what is intended here. And, you know, I mean, you don't want to overcomplicate the solution if the intention here is to expand a principal business use. And the only problem is the line doesn't go far enough, then the easiest way to fix it is to fix the line and not try to play games with the terminology and try to shove a square peg into a round hole here. I mean, there are ways you can do it. The question is, what's the best way to do it? And are you going to create more problems than you're going to solve by, you know, getting cute with it?
correct, and we want to try to figure out the best way to do it to help the businesses and the colleges out down here without creating a bigger problem down the road.
Yeah, and in that case, the best way to do it may be for the trustees to take a second look and do what they think they did the first time around.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
just
which is
modifying the zoning.
That makes it real easy.
Modifying the zoning map takes like an hour or two, as long as, but someone needs to tell them where to put the line. So that would be a very easy solution that I think would be ideal to expand that district to make it work. And then there's no zoning issues whatsoever with regards to use. So.
Okay. Yeah, and they have a we have a meeting, or they have a meeting on Wednesday, so I will bring that up. They have a special meeting on Wednesday, and I'll make sure that this gets addressed and pushed on Wednesday.
What is that meeting for?
I'm not quite sure, but I have asked to be allowed to be part of it, and because of this issue, I mean, we're trying to help these businesses out in a very troubling time. So whatever we can do to do that, I think it's on us as a community.
So Steve, can you answer another question? There is a temporary law on the books to allow restaurants and bars to do the outdoor seating. And I think I heard that expired at the end of October. Is that correct?
It was expanded until April 15th.
So can Lock 32 do what they want to do under that temporary? Because the way I've seen this is they're not really increasing the intensity of their use with this coronavirus thing, because they're not at full occupancy indoors per orders from Cuomo. So basically they're taking existing indoor capacity and moving it outdoors. So they're not really increasing the intensity of anything. It's just changing where they're located. And that's
Correct.
just on a temporary basis.
Correct. And right now they can still use the outdoor space if you weren't freezing your cookies off sitting out there.
Right. So I think the issue here is that, you know, then they might just need site plan approval.
Pardon?
If the use is okay, then the question is, you know, how do you legalize the structure?
Correct. And I think by what you're saying is the straightforward path for the structure would be to expand the tavern district and make it an accessory use to Block 32.
What I'm saying is that solves the use issue. The structure issue, I think, needs to be resolved through site plan approval.
Correct. We still have to have site plan approval, yes.
Well, so Mindy, what I was getting at is there is another possible pending application for temporary use to permit a tent to be constructed on the site to use for the winter until this pavilion can be constructed.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So that's what I was wondering, if that could fall under the trustees' special code that they've put in place for restaurants. That would seem to be an ideal solution, so it doesn't need to come before us.
Right. Is that in the zoning code, or is that a standalone law?
It's as far as the outdoor seating?
what Justin was talking about, the thing that expires in
Okay.
April.
Yeah, that was just to expand, allow restaurants, tavern to utilize outdoor space based on the pandemic.
So where would I find that?
Oh,
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with
I
you.
have not seen a copy of that law or policy or whatever it is.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm not, Mindy, I'm not a legalese, so I don't know the
Oh,
whole.
no, I'm sorry. I'm not being critical of you at all, Steve.
No,
I apologize if it's coming off that way. I'm trying to be helpful.
Oh, I know.
And
We're brainstorming.
yeah, I need to be able to read it to be helpful. That's all.
All right, I will research or have, I'll find it from the minutes and see what we can, I can get it to you to see how that was accomplished.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And my
really
opinion,
am passionate about this stuff, and so please don't take it personally.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all, Minnie. We're all, like I said, we're just trying to figure out. I'm as confused at some of the code as anybody. I'm trying to work my way through it. I'm finding interesting things in it as I'm delving into it. And it's not something that, you can figure out in a month. I think it takes many. I have 2 pages of things that I have questions on.
only 2?
So, we're, like I said, we're just trying to figure out the best way to help these people out, do it legally, and in the most expeditious way we can. I'm not sure if the ability for the outdoor seating that in the municipality was something to do with the governor's, rulings on the COVID. I'm not quite sure how everybody got away or got allowed to do this, to expand outdoor seating, but it has something to do with Governor Cuomo's executive orders in regards to the pandemic.
Right. He authorized municipalities to pass laws to allow for temporary outdoor uses that would not otherwise be permitted, but then the municipalities had to pass the laws.
Correct.
So the question is, what did we do?
All right. I will. Is Linda still on? Yeah.
Yeah.
This would be a Dorothea question that I will address tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got the resolution. It looks like it was 6/9/2020. There's a resolution to establish temporary outdoor seating areas for restaurants in the village of Pittsford. I can send that to you.
Here's a minute, Justin.
Yeah, I'll send it over to everyone.
Okay, but Steve, I guess what my question was is, can they use this resolution passed by the trustees, resolution law, whatever it was, to do the temporary outdoor serving in a tent over the winter without coming before us? Because I know that was the intent of that code, was to give you the ability to quickly authorize these outdoor seatings without having to come before a board. So, it seems to be within the intent of that law, but I don't know what the verbiage is. So if that can be done administratively, that sounds great to me.
Well, the issue is, and Mrs. Collins and I spoke today, it becomes a financial issue because having a tent that is viable through the winter is financially tough. And to try and do a tent and then try and build a structure may not work together. Mrs. Collins is trying to do something very nice, and I don't think her pockets are endless. So, doing one may harm the other. So that's why we're trying to brainstorm to find out the best path forward for a permanent solution versus something temporary that then would not allow a permanent solution.
According to the resolution, the code enforcement officer is hereby authorized to temporarily permit expanded outdoor seating dining areas for establishments, restaurants, and taverns that currently possess a valid special use permit pursuant to the code. Such permit shall be issued pursuant to the guidelines, conditions, and restrictions in Exhibit A, which is incorporated herein. This is a question for Mindy. If Steve permits a special use permit to Lot 32 for outdoor seating, does that work for doing like a site plan review of a permanent structure?
No.
Okay.
But anyway, that sounds like that Lot 32 has a valid special use permit to operate their existing establishment, and the zoning code was changed after they legally got their permit. So it sounded like it's well within Steve's direction to authorize them temporary outdoor seating like has been done all summer long. Sounds like that's within his purview. So if it's via a temporary tent or via tables, so I'm just getting at the comments from Steve earlier at they would be coming before us for a temporary permit. It doesn't sound like that's necessary.
Well, was this resolution extended past October 31st? Because under Section 2, it terminates on October 31st.
No, it was extended till April 15th. I think at last month's meeting. I know it was extended till April 15th of 2021.
Okay, well, that may resolve the use issue, but I think we still need to address the site plan issue.
Okay. So anyway, Steve is going to follow up with the trustees about expanding the district, which solves all of our use-related problems. And so hopefully that can be resolved fairly quickly. And it sounds like if they want to do a temporary tent, it sounds like Steve can handle that. So that's great. There's a bunch of noise going on from somebody.
It's caller number 3.
One of the callers on the bottom there, I think.
Just muted.
Okay. So Ms. Collins, did you have any comments or anything to offer at this time?
I think that, so when I first logged in, there was some conversation about the intended use. And if you recall, when I spoke with all of you last time, the use very much from the beginning was much beyond Block 32. Yes, that's the space as we describe it, the space between Block 32 and Aladdin's, just to orient folks. But Simply Crepes, Coal Tower have been using that as well. People are getting takeout, bringing it out there, who might feel more comfortable than eating indoors. I have worked with all of the tenants. There's actually 10 tenants in the 4 buildings that we own, and they're all very excited about the prospect of having something more permanent be there and feel that it would advantage all of them. As we spoke last time, we really think it's likely that people are going to continue to be more comfortable outdoors eating for a very long time, so that those other restaurants besides Aladdin's and Lock 32 feel a big advantage for all of them. So we have submitted the architectural plan, the topographical map. Steve has been working with both our architect and me to try and address all of the other issues that need to be addressed for the site plan review. So my hope is that we can move forward with that. I did, after the suggestion about a tent last week, I did a lot of research. I am certainly not a tent expert, but I learned a lot in the last week to get something that is advisable to have during a Rochester winter with heavy rain and snow. To rent is $7,000 a month, and to purchase is $65,000. So I'm very uncomfortable putting something up that is not advised to do when there is rain and snow, as we know there will be. So that kind of expenditure would really, you know, it just doesn't make sense if in fact we can do something that is going to be more enduring and last a while. So that, you know, that's our hope, that the things that we've presented in those plans will be reviewed, and any of the areas that we need to change prior to the site plan review, we can identify tonight or in the next couple of weeks so that we can have those addressed.
Question, I don't mean to interrupt you, Jenny. Mindy, now you say this has to be an accessory to a principal use, correct?
I'm saying that an accessory structure for a accessory structure must be accessory to the principal, the structure, the use of the principal structure.
All right, so it could be an accessory use to Aladdin's, correct? Why does it necessarily have to be tagged to an accessory use to Lock 32?
That's how it's been defined. It doesn't have to be Aladdin's.
Right, but I'm saying it could be Aladdin's versus Lock 32 for as far as the legal zoning requirement for an accessory structure. Doesn't that?
It's not on the same lot as Aladdin's.
I believe it is on the same lot.
It is. It's the same.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Aladdin's
all four buildings
within the Tavern Overlay District?
No, but it's irrelevant to the Tavern Overlay. The Aladdin's is not Tavern Overlay. It's a restaurant, or Simply Crepes could be an accessory structure to Simply Crepes. Could be an accessory structure to the Coal Tower. They're all on the same lot.
But none of those are in the Tavern Overlay, so they don't really help us out, do they?
Well, they're restaurants which are permitted.
It's got nothing to do with Tavern Overlay as far as the requirement to consider an accessory structure on that property does not necessarily be tied to Tavern Overlay. Now, based on the code or the law that the village passed, I would be able to authorize Lock 32 the use of the space till April 15th, or not. Maybe Lock 32 couldn't use it till they continued that district. But the other principal uses on the property could utilize the structure if it was built. Correct?
Yeah. So the question is then, if this is going to be an accessory structure to a principal use that does not involve the sale or consumption of alcohol, you could probably have it where people are allowed to sit and eat but can't drink.
Correct, until the Tavern Overlay District was expanded.
This just came up. I mean, let's take a little deeper dive into this and not just you know, kind of say, oh yeah, that sounds good, let's do it this way. You know, I'd really like to sit down and read the statutes and make sure that this is something that I can recommend that the board do if it has to go before the board. If it doesn't go before the board, what I think doesn't really matter.
Right, it has to go before the planning board as far as site plan review, no matter what, because it is a structure, correct?
It is a structure, it will need site plan review.
Yes, so it has to go before the planning board, but labeling it to Lock 32 and tying it to the Tavern Overlay and alcohol is not necessarily the method that has to be to start to process this action forward for Ms. Collins.
Now, I had one
question. Susan, yeah?
Yeah, just, I'm sorry, but why does this have to be an accessory structure? Because that's, what's an alternative to being an accessory structure?
It can be a principal structure.
So a principal structure, would that be more straightforward and then wait for the tavern overlay to come?
I guess
I
we'd
mean-
have to look at that.
I mean, I really need to look at I would need to look at the code and see what uses are permitted as of right in this zoning district. But yeah, I mean, why not? It's certainly a simple way to do it.
Mhm.
And if we can identify a use that is permitted as of right and have an application for site plan approval for a use that is permitted as of right, then we don't have to fiddle around with the tavern district overlay.
Right.
And if at some point the owner wants to change the use, then if the code permits it at that time, it's no big deal.
Right.
May
And
I
if
ask
the code, oops. And if the code gets changed in the meantime, I mean, if the tavern overlay gets extended, then that would also seem to be a streamlined way to address this. But
Right.
Very hard to
Justin,
read.
are you the one who's putting these wonderful things up? I mean, I can't believe you can do that so quickly. Is that you, Justin L?
Yeah, Mr. Leetgib is getting those
Sorry, yeah.
muted. I had a brief question for Ms. Collins that would kind of help clarify what's going on here, because I've been a little confused. We're at the end of the construction season right now, so I had presumed this pavilion would not be constructed until spring. And I've been hearing talk about using this temporarily, so I'm just kind of, would be helpful for me to understand when is this proposed to be built?
Yes, I mean, it's clear now that the process will be such that there won't be approvals until spring, until the weather has changed. This idea first, was floated in late summer, and I suppose in some inherent optimism, I had thought perhaps it could happen sooner, but the logistics are such that no, it won't happen now until spring.
Okay. 'Cause I was just confused because my presumption was this would be constructed in spring and tents were floated as a way to get through the winter. And you stated they're expensive, which makes complete sense. Unfortunately, I'm sure tents are in great demand right now too, which doesn't help.
Oh yes, I learned a lot about them, and they are. And unless we wanted to make this a shared village and Collins endeavor, $7,000 a month is not something that I can certainly do. So yes, but spring is our hope, and that's what we put in the timetable.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying the timing of that. That's what I had presumed, because that gives a little bit of time to sort everything out. I hope it doesn't take an extraordinary amount of time to sort everything out, but there's some legal questions, and I know Steve is still working with you on the drawings. So hopefully we're in a position to start looking at this in the near future. That would be good for everybody, but it sounds like a lot of work will be done in December, hopefully, on getting it through the village's end.
If this was labeled as an outdoor assembly area, it would require a special permit by the village board, but then still get site plan approval for the physical building, correct?
Yes.
That's an accessory use.
Well, it require, under the MUEC, it requires special permit.
Right.
It
And
does
it's-
require a special permit, right?
Yeah,
For the
and it's
use,
under
you
accessory
need
use.
site plan approval for the structure.
Correct. But then it wouldn't have to be an accessory use tied to one of the other businesses, correct?
If it's under the assembly part that they just set up, yeah, you're right.
Well,
Because
that's
the
under,
assembly would be the use.
but the assembly,
Mhm.
that's under the accessory section in the table. So I think that's still an accessory use as the outdoor assembly cells, display or storage area.
Well, I think Mindy's requested a few times here to have some time to look through our zoning code. So I think pinning down the legalese here in this meeting doesn't make sense. I think that Mindy and Steve can follow up, and if it's a special use, if our debates are, do they have to apply? That's another question I had is, are the trustees involved in this review or with a special use permit or not? Steve, do you know if that's, I guess it depends a lot on how these legal interpretations of what this is.
Correct. That's the big thing is that where we can, we got to stay within the legal limits, you know, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not a legal expert at all, and I'm still delving through this code. My question would be for Ms. Collins, if this was approved sooner, would the facility be able to be built sooner?
I am not a construction expert either, but I think that's weather dependent. But we do have 2 contractors who have given bids. We have all of that lined up. So if it happened sooner and weather permitted, absolutely.
Yeah, because I've worked through all winter. I've been in construction my whole life. I mean, it's not the nicest thing in the world, but in order to facilitate something. So Mindy and I will keep in close touch. Mindy, if you could delve into this and let me know, you know, the best path forward that works legally.
I mean, I can review the things that are in front of the board, but it's really not the board's place to make legal recommendations to applicants.
Okay.
Now,
under the code, though,
beyond the scope of what I'm supposed to be doing here.
right.
I think you said you wanted to look at the use tables and as to whether or what interpretations are permissible here, I think is where you're
right,
going.
I can certainly do that.
Yeah, I guess
that's different from giving a recommendation as what's the best way to go about doing this.
Right, all right. I guess my question would be then, in what Justin had said, Justin Lake had said, under the accessory, there are 2 labels there. There is accessory use or structure, and then there's outdoor assembly, sale, display. Is that still considered an accessory structure and require the same caveat of being tied to a principal business?
Yeah, unless the village code has done something very unusual with how they treat accessory structures, the answer is yes. Accessory use structures must be accessory to a principal use, or else it's a principal structure, you know?
Call it
That has its own use.
Yeah. Do that.
All right. Well, anyway, we'll let's give Mindy a chance to review that code. So I guess does anyone else have any other questions about this? Where we're going with this? I think getting through these interpretations of use are going to be very important to figure out when we can move forward with this. There's a couple possible paths.
Yeah, because I guess I'm in looking at the MUEC, I mean, as a principal use.
Everything above accessory are principal uses.
Right, and I don't, in the current code under principal use, I don't know that there's a label that would fit this as a principal structure. Do you, Justin, do you, Justin, liked it? Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to fit into any of these categories. It does seem to fit, I mean, at a glance to me, it seems like the outdoor assembly cells, which is an accessory use. And then if you follow this over, it seems like that has certain restrictions about being adjacent to the wall of the principal structure, and not extending more than 20 feet from that wall and that sort of thing.
Actually, I'm going to take that back, because technically it could be considered recreation or, oh no, it's indoor. It's labeled as indoor. Never mind. Of course,
This can be, from my understanding, this can be an accessory use to all properties on that site, which doesn't have to connect it to Lock 32, right? So it's an accessory structure to every restaurant, which could be dining only and not liquor.
I guess the question there would be, what is considered indoor?
I don't know, is it defined by the code? I mean, indoor usually means you've got 4 walls and a roof.
Right, I wouldn't go down that road.
Well, here we go. Recreation or facility indoor, completely enclosed.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that won't work.
Mm-hmm.
So if the structure had windows and solid walls, but with sliding windows, it would be considered a indoor structure, as in any other structure that would have windows and doors.
The devil's in the details, Steve.
Pardon?
Yeah, okay,
I said
so
the
clearly,
devil's in the details. I mean, you know, we could spend a lot of time playing what if, but you know,
I'm not what if, I'm not, like I said, I mean, I'm trying to brainstorm as a way to accomplish this reasonably, you know, for the applicant or for the community. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to cheat or squeak around anything. I'm just.
No. I'm not suggesting that you're trying to do that. It's just, these are really not questions that can be answered responsibly off the top of my head. That's
Right.
all I'm saying, is that, yeah, it may be possible. Lots of things may be possible, but I wouldn't advise the board on something until I've had a chance to understand what's being proposed and, you know, had a chance to look at the legal requirements. That's all.
Okay, yeah, and I think what's going to make a big difference is what the design of the facility is, of the actual structure. Is it a freestanding with just posts and a roof, or does it have enclosed walls? Because and Mr. Pope and I have talked about, you know, having sliding windows or doors so that the place could be completely enclosed, weather tight, and allow the use year round. So part of that, you know, Ms. Collins, is going to be the design of the unit itself, is how it would fit in within the zoning code itself.
and then the other issue is whether the trustees are willing to amend the zoning code to make any of our concerns go away, which is a very easy path forward, should they be willing to do that.
Right.
Correct. And talking to the board, they're very amicable to doing whatever they need to do within reason to allow the businesses to sustain. I do know that in talking with the board.
All right. I vote to move on. I think we know where we stand on this.
Yeah, I do too, Dave. I think we beat this horse pretty good, and we left with some questions, but I will continue to work with Ms. Collins, Mr. Pope, and as I said, I will address the board on Wednesday, and I'll make sure I get in touch and let people know where things stand.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So sorry, we sometimes have these long debates, Mrs. Collins, on how to work with our code. Fortunately, that happens. It's never perfect.
I don't expect perfection.
Okay, so we're working on a path forward. So that's anyway. So as we said, it's move on to our next agenda item, which was, I think, to go over. We first had seeker, This might be a very quick agenda item. We had the environmental review. The trustees and the town board want to be lead agency for the active transportation plan review. I don't think in their most recent stuff they sent us, I did not see their full environmental assessment form, but we've looked at this to death, and I personally want nothing to do with their environmental review right now. I'm willing to let them have at it.
Okay, guys, I want to say thank you very much for your patience and your help in all this. I'm going to sign off. I don't need to be part of this, but again, thank you for working on this, and I'll do my best to clarify things and come in with a little more crisp information so that we can help these people along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have to debate the seeker thing, but I would certainly be willing to put a motion on the floor to grant them lead agency as requested.
So the beautiful thing is we can do absolutely nothing, and that just automatically happens.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Then we don't have to write anything.
No
Yay.
motion. Did it.
Motion retracted.
Motion denied. No motion.
So no motion?
No motion.
So
Okay.
we have no. It sounds like the general theme is we have no objections to them being lead agency, but
No.
Okay, that's fine. That's all we need to know.
Just gonna let the time run out.
Well,
Yes.
that's already scheduled, right?
I think so, yes.
But didn't they ask for, I mean, if we made a resolution to do it, it would give them some extra time? Do we feel like doing that?
Accelerates it.
I think they can have as much time as they want with their, oh, do they want us to pass it so they can have a meeting sooner?
Yes.
I thought the meeting was scheduled for afterwards.
30 days for the letter. So if
Which
we
was
make a
November
motion to accelerate that, yeah, maybe it would be nice just to tell them with a motion.
Yes. Yes.
All we have to do is sign this letter and send it back, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. How about I authorize Joanne to sign the letter? How does that sound? We want to do that? She said she wanted some more.
Sure, that one I can
action
handle.
items.
All right, well, I approve her signing this letter.
All right, I'll
Okay.
make a motion then to authorize Joanne to sign the letter stating the planning board has no objections to the Village of Pittsford trustees and the town of Pittsford board to be lead agency for the environmental review.
Happy to do it.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So I think the only other thing was to go over this subdivision resolution.
Yep. And just as a FYI, I have a hard stop in 9 minutes, which might be a little short to get through this, but I wanted you to know that.
And I got the resolution like after 6.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen the changes. So
I don't know if there's any urgency to this. So do you want to just table this for another time? I'm
Yes.
fine with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's fine.
That'd be great.
Justin, the only other item was the letter to the town board regarding the supplement to the ATP. If you wanted to discuss that, I have not sent it to the rest of the board members yet, but Susan has reviewed my draft and made a bunch of changes. So I think they were talking about December 2nd as the ATP joint meeting, if I recall.
Right.
So how do you want to proceed on that one?
Do you want to, that was fairly short. If you want to pull that up, we could just have everyone look at that. I had no objections
Sure.
to it.
Yep, just give me a moment here.
There's only a 1-page letter, I believe, so we can just all take a glance at it. Thank you for working on that, you two, by the way. That's very nice.
Sure, no problem. Okay, just give me one moment though here, sorry. just need to share that screen.
So is my video feed still off?
Yes.
It is.
Okay.
Okay. I can make this larger here. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Susan gave me a lot of good feedback on this, and she totally rewrote the first paragraph in a way that was much more clear.
I like it. Yeah. Nicely done. To the point.
Bravo.
So I don't know what kind of leverage they can get with their consultant to allow them to integrate that into the main draft, but I figure that we should just state that it's important to us that that be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's good.
It looks good.
And I had put my name on the bottom here for the Village of Pittsford Planning Board. That could be from our chair, however you want to do it. I have no preference.
Maybe put all our names.
Sure.
I think that tends to take a long time. I don't mind signing it. I don't mind if Justin Lightgib signs it. It doesn't make a huge difference to me.
Oh, just sign it. Yeah, never mind.
How could you go up to the top just briefly? Yep, I'm fine. Doesn't matter who.
Yeah, sign it, Justin.
Okay, I'll sign it and forward it to the town board and also CC the village board members.
Okay, sounds good. I'll just make a motion to authorize Justin Lightgib to sign this letter on behalf of the planning board and to submit regarding the active transportation plan.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to keep the public hearing open for the 69 South Street or whatever that number was?
With the South Street one, we already made that motion.
All right,
Yeah, we
very
did.
good. Thanks.
At least I believe we did. So
We did. 29 South Street. Yep.
All right.
I have a question. Is there any interest in scheduling a special meeting to button up any of our lingering issues before our next regular meeting? I think we had meeting minutes to go through. We have this resolution that Dave Marshall had revised for the subdivision things. And maybe we need to have further discussion about the Collins and as to whether or not their application seems reasonably complete or not. I'm just asking the question. It's not a requirement.
I will do anything to help the Collins Pavilion move along. So I'm okay with it.
Yep, I'm good.
Agreed.
So I'm taking a look at it. If we wanted to have a meeting on the 30th, that's a Monday, 2 weeks from today.
I can do that.
I don't know what the agenda is going to be yet, but my suggestion would be meeting minutes and the resolution that Dave had mentioned, and we'll see if we can have a it might be appropriate for a workshop on something. I don't know. Either of the other two applications that are pending. So it would not be a public hearing. It'd be a workshop and document review meeting.
Okay.
So Monday, the 30th, at what time works for people? 6:30?
6.
6 is good.
6 is good.
Linda, you all right with arranging for that?
Yep, it's a workshop, right? He said.
Yeah, workshop, and we'll look over any pending meeting minutes and the subdivision application resolution. And we may add a workshop to look at some of these other drawings that we're expecting to come in for either the Collins or South Street.
I will send out notifications for that.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and do we have anything else? You have your hard stop, Dave, right?
No, I gotta go, but if you're gonna make a motion to close, I could stay. If not, I've got a bolt.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion to close the meeting. Thank you.
Second.
How did you vote? Aye.
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 Well, okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
And
Thank you.
thank you, Mindy, for chiming in and looking at the code. There's a fair amount of complexity there in the interpretations of getting that going.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to do it. I just don't want us to get ahead of ourselves. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want it done right.
I'm in agreement with that, and we are all usually on board with trying to get everything done right. So, yeah, I was very confused with what Steve said, whereas he thought it was in that district, and if it's not in that, it seems pretty clear it's not in that tavern district. But whether that's important or not is